Employment interviews can be an invaluable part of the hiring process, or they can be totally worthless, depending on how they're done. These days, a good number of job search candidates have been through outplacement or other interview training, making them more experienced at interviewing and better equipped than many interviewers. If you're a hiring executive, how should you balance that playing field? First, take the interview process seriously and take time to prepare. Have a list of written questions and make sure they're good ones. And take notes throughout the interview so you don't forget who said what. I'll be giving some examples of interview questions the pros ask later in this video. Next, understand what employment interviews are and what they're not. Some people liken a job interview to a friendly chat. I disagree. Managerial talent cannot be assessed through pleasant conversation and gut feeling alone. After properly conducting a number of interviews, yes, that's plural, with each promising candidate, you should know a great deal about a candidate's experience and how well they fit with your job requirements and your organization's culture. These conclusions can't be reached without some probing questions and some down and dirty discussion. But don't try to accomplish too much in the first interview. That's the screening interview. And its primary purpose is to help you decide whether you want a second interview. Next, ask focused, probing questions. Once you've decided which candidates you're serious about, what kind of questions should you ask in follow-up interviews? Avoid predictable or closed-ended questions such as, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Are you a good communicator? Why does this position interest you? Use insightful, creative, open-ended questions that demand thoughtful responses. Probing questions that get behind the facade and force candidates to think, giving you a real glimpse inside their heads. For example, tell me about a recurring problem in your last job, something you wanted to solve but didn't. Define good communication. Give me an example of an important business decision you made that went wrong. What would you have done differently if you could? These are not pat questions. They make candidates think and help you get behind their rehearsed responses. Ask how candidates have handled difficult situations in the past or pose what-if questions about how they'd solve an ethical problem. Where would they be comfortable cutting corners? How have they avoided making ethical compromises? How far would they go to close a big deal? That's how you tell if someone will be a good fit in your organization. Ask about the candidate's values. Ask, what does independence mean to you? Ask, what does integrity mean to you? And here's one of my favorites. Describe a situation where you decided it was okay to lie. Push candidates to be introspective. Ask, if this was not to work out and we had to fire you, what would the likeliest reason be? Or, if this was not to work out and you decided to quit, what would the likeliest reason be? Probe for candidates' operating styles with questions like, we all want more information before making a decision, but we have to stop somewhere. Tell me about a time you had to draw the line and how it worked out. As candidates tell their decision-making stories, listen for evidence that they have a framework for taking decisions. Do they know how to lead? Do they know how to implement? Do they take responsibility for their mistakes? And is there any evidence that they learn from them? Above all, avoid the halo effect. That's what we call it when an interviewer falls in love with a candidate and decides far too soon that the person is perfect for the job. Sadly, the higher up you go in an organization, the more likely it is that emotion will crowd out reason. At senior levels, many job interviews become more conversations than rigorous evaluations. Untrained in analytical interviewing and eager to get the job done, senior executives often decide just to trust their gut when hiring, forgetting the second half of the proverb, trust but verify. I hope these tips will help you get more out of your next important hiring interview. If you found them useful, share them and find more on our website.